I'm Becky McCray. I am from a town of about 5,000 people, Alva, Oklahoma, and I actually live just outside that town in a very small town called Hopeton, Oklahoma, with a population of about 30 people. I run a liquor store and a cattle ranch, and that always draws laughs.
As it should.
As it should. I also do work online. People always ask then, if you run a cattle ranch, why are you here? And because I also am interested in the future and the survival of small towns, so it's wonderful to follow Phil and the discussion of what Blacksburg is doing, to talk to you about what small towns are doing and what our future looks like. And I'm very concerned, of course, tourism is one of the biggest pieces there, and so I also do tourism currents along with Sheila Scarborough. So that's a little about me. Cody?
My name is Cody Heitschmidt. I was actually born and raised in a town of about 40,000 in Kansas, Hutchinson, Kansas. I then went off to the Marine Corps and came back, and I now live in a house that, unlike our current surroundings, minus my family, the next human being is a little over 2 miles away from our house. This whole thing is so exciting to me because really the way the world's changed, that my kids are communicating with people all over the world, as opposed to this little niche that without the digital communications we were kind of stuck in. So that's a little bit about me. I run a web design and digital advertising company, and that's how I got involved in this, and have just found a love of talking to people like Becky. So
tell us why the whole world is like a small town.
Kind of have this theory that in small towns, out of a necessity, customer service became the only competitive advantage that you had in a small town. The reason behind that being, you do something good, it travels so fast in a small town. You mess up and do something bad, it also travels just as fast in a small town. There's a good thing, there's a pro and con side to it, and because of the state of now, this concept that Jeff's wanting us to explore here, the whole world has become a small town. It's no longer you do something bad and there's more people to take care of. That word travels so fast that it can really hurt you. But at the same time, there's wonderful examples of you do something good and the whole world can find out about it as well. So that's our theory here, that the state of now has made the whole world a small town because of communication measures.
Right. Customer service really does become your only sustainable competitive advantage in this world. We found that out in small towns. I really do run a retail liquor store, and I was talking to a friend of mine named Josh Tomberlin, who I have literally known all my life. And he was at that time managing the auto parts store in Alva, and so we were sharing our relative challenges as retail store managers. And he looked me square in the eye and he said, "Customer service is all you got." And he's absolutely right. The only thing that we can do is learn each of our customers as an individual, find out their likes and their dislikes, cater to what they need, and spend a lot more time building community than we do selling. And that's how we treat customer service in a small town. And it's just like the skills that you need to go online and sell successfully today.
In the small town environment, there's a coffee shop, and it's a little bit different than the stereotypical big city Starbucks type coffee shop. It's literally the place where a lot of people go and just sit. And in the small towns, not very many of them are breaking out a laptop or an iPad. They're just sitting and drinking coffee and talking. And that's where the communication happens. That's where people find out what's going on. And if this guy went to the barber shop and the guy stabbed him with the scissors, very quickly the whole town is going to know about it. But if you got the greatest, most affordable haircut and great company, it's the same thing. To me, really Twitter, all of the state of now, all the digital communications, but really Twitter is that coffee shop of the world that you do something good, and it doesn't matter where you're at. It doesn't matter if you're in the middle of nowhere, Kansas or Oklahoma, or in the middle of 10 million people in New York City. The whole world can know about that good or bad thing that you did, just like it's always been happening in the small town coffee shop.
So let's go on and talk about how it is that as small town people, we really gain a lot when we go online. So would you like to talk about that?
Yeah, both from a business sense and just from a cultural sense. I mentioned my kids earlier and how much more culture. I mean, we travel and we get out and we go places, but they're able to communicate with people that don't live within 5 miles of them under the excellent parental guidance of their father and mother. But they're able to do that, and I think shutting that off is a horrible idea parenting-wise, not the point, but control it, let them experience it. But really, the biggest single factor for me, there's lots of business benefits, but in that small town environment, our culture, and it gets a bad rap, but if you can imagine Nickerson, Kansas is the town I live a mile outside of, there's 1,500 people, and it is not because of anything negative, but it is a very WASP town, okay? It's not a negative thing, it's just that's who's there. And there's a touchy subject that I want to talk about, that when I was raised, gay people were not a part of it, okay? And some were there, it was a whole different environment that you just weren't exposed to it. My parents did nothing to give me a negative perception, it's just a lack of understanding is what it is. And I have this, for some reason, Becky and I have discussed it, I've developed all the way from don't talk about it very much to very open and aggressive about it, gay friends on Twitter. And I love it because it's just, it's done this weird sense of they're just people too, that we didn't have because of lack of exposure. Does that make sense? I hope there's nothing negative coming out of this because my parents did not raise me to be like that. It was just a lack of understanding. That's the kind of cultural exposure that I can be sitting in the middle of nowhere, Kansas, get and really, really grow from a person. To me, that's one of the biggest small town advantages of this whole coffee shop concept.
I have well, not a similar story. I have a very different story to tell. We're going to move to a different section of it, which is that I have a business, and I have connected with a group of people that we run a mastermind group, and we meet monthly. And those people all live in the Netherlands. And so I'm connected with a Dutch mastermind group that helps me with my business and concepts, and yet they have a completely non-USA perspective that is very good for me to understand from their view what they're doing with business, and that helps me. That's something that was not possible for me before the State of Now occurred. It also gives us access to markets that we never had before. Hugh McLeod, some of you know Gaping Void, he does cartoons on the back of business cards, but also does a lot with marketing and PR. He grew up in Alpine, Texas, which is really in the middle of nowhere, but a beautiful town. He has also lived in London and in New York, has done a lot of national and global work in marketing, and has chosen to, right now he's splitting his time between Alpine, Texas and some beach in Florida. It's, you know, really rough to be Hugh right now, but that's the kind of thing, the global small town micro brand, that you can do that because you have the access to the technology. So we really gain when we go online.
Oh, absolutely. The exposure, the reach, the communication that small town people, it was much harder for them to get before, and even the sense of them being labeled small-minded because they're from a small town. They're not small-minded. Before this sense of communication, there was just a lack of exposure for things for them. Sure. And so the small towns definitely gain from the aspect of the State of Now.
Right. Now, the flip side of that is that all of you gain as well.
From us.
From us. No matter where you live, you gain from the connection with small town people. Most of you eat, right? Where else are you going to connect with the people who raise your food? They're not living in downtown New York City. They live in Nebraska. They live everywhere. That's Steve Tucker. He's coming on stage next. So those kind of connections can benefit you as well. There's also a wonderful business advantage. A company like LL Bean, you all know LL Bean, and they have a wonderful sense of customer service. They've been based their whole time in Freeport, Maine, and have never moved and never lost their sense of small town customer service.
I think the huge customer service example that I don't know where Zappos got their environment from, if it was a small town influence, but Zappos very much operates like a small town business, which was nearly impossible, if not completely impossible, with communication methods 15 years ago. To be able to interact with your customer and kind of, whether you do or not, give them the sense that you're getting to know them and want to get to know them. That's a small town, that's a successful small town business strategy. Know your customers, know what they want, sometimes before they want it, and solve their problems before they even know they have a problem. That's how a small town retail liquor store survives. Zappos is able to take a global market model, apply those principles to it because of our communication methods now, and just knock it out of the park with customer service.
Another great example of how you can gain from being connected with small town people is with Native American tribes. In a time when we're all talking about building digital tribes, building small communities online, imagine what we can learn from someone like Allison Aldridge Sauer with the Chickasaw Nation in Oklahoma, who led a great panel at South by Southwest this year on what digital tribes can learn from native tribes. They have hundreds of years of experience in building small communities that work, that are cohesive, that have that sense of community that we're trying to bring to things. There's a lot we can learn. And where do you find them? They're in the small towns. That's where you find the interesting people. So we both gain. We gain when we come to you, and you gain when you come to us in small towns. Global is the new local. Cheryl Lawson from Social Media Tulsa talks about how everything has completely changed, and we now have this kind of global connection where we both gain from the interaction. And that's the one thing I want you to remember. The one thing I want you to remember is just because we are from a small town does not mean we're small-minded or of small value to you. We have great value to bring to you, just as you have great value to bring to us. Talk about Cody Talks.
It's really where it started, in this sense of, because of what I was doing several years ago, everyone was talking about blogs. People were asking me about blogs in a consulting type sense, so I thought I'd better start one so I knew what they actually were. What's grown out of that is this conversation that there's literally dozens of people that comment on my blog or reply to my posts on Twitter centered around the discussions that I want to generate on my blog that are hundreds and hundreds of miles away from me. Tens of thousands of miles away from me, and it's just crazy. And I love that discussion and the growth that I get it, and I hope that I'm able to show to them that because I don't have anyone living within 2 miles of me, that I'm still not a small-minded, naive person, or I'm at least trying to get away from it, however it goes. That my blog has been the greatest thing for me to grow as a human being because of that discussion that can have with people that aren't sitting next to me face to face.
I brought my nephew with me to this conference. He waves tentatively. Round of applause for Colton Foote. All right. Colton is here broadening his horizons. He's meeting so many of you and learning so much. He has the opportunity to choose where he lives, from the biggest city to the smallest town, and still have the connections to the world. Is that not amazing? Now he's like, oh Lord, now I have to live up to all that. But, so we all gain, we both gain. You gain in connection with us, and we gain in connection with you. And so we are coming to you today to invite you to be part of that conversation September 20th in Hutchinson, Kansas, when we do the small town event again.
Yeah, so we spent 13 minutes and 53 seconds talking about how much we can accomplish not face-to-face. But there is still this wonderful joy of us traveling to New York City, meeting people, seeing the things that we see. And in closing, that's what we'd like to invite everyone here and everyone watching to do, that we're going to have the second 140 Comp Small Town in Hutchinson, Kansas, my hometown, September 20th of this year. Very, very cool event because of all of the people that came to it and watched it and participated last year. So excited to have that again, and you guys can come out and see that there's no 8th floor anywhere in Hutchinson, Kansas to live on.
So I want to end with the thought about hybrid vigor. Jeff and I came up with the idea of hybrid vigor after the very first 140 conference here in New York City. We had a phone call, and Jeff was searching for what's the word to describe the magic of what we accomplished here in New York. And I said, it's because you're not from a small town, you don't know. It's hybrid vigor. When you crossbreed two different things like hybrid tomatoes, what you end up with is something that's even stronger than what started out. And that is the idea of hybrid vigor, and I encourage all of you to exchange ideas with people who are not like you, create some hybrid vigor of ideas, and go out, change the world, and join us September 20th in Hutchinson, Kansas.
Thank you.
Hybrid vigor.